wholly unsatisfying third act, Batman! God damn, stay still, you stupid fucking camera! How many fucking twists are there in this movie? Shyamalan, what are you doing? I can't pick an intro for this. Let's go with all of them! Just like Shyamalan. Hey guys, so, just a solo review today, because again, it's fucking January and everyone, this has just been the worst start of the year. So I decided, like, I need to get something out this week, and, like, you know, I don't really think that many people care about the upside too much, so I'd rather go see Glass, which, of course, is the new Shyamalan movie that, for better or worse, a lot of people are talking about right now, and I think I'm like, alright, I'll finally make time to see it. Now, I never seen Unbreakable. I did see Split, which, if you're curious my thoughts on that, there is a review for it on the website. I do remember liking Split quite a lot. I don't think it was, like, amazing or anything like that, but for Shyamalan standards, I thought it was actually pretty good. It was honestly worth watching for James McAvoy, who was having so much goddamn fun in that movie, and he is having so much goddamn fun in this one too. It's honestly almost worth the price of admission alone just to watch James McAvoy do whatever the fuck he wants. And it's kind of great. As for this movie, this movie's not doing great critically right now. I think it's like 37%. Some people like fucking hate it. I don't, like, that's pretty much all I've heard, honestly, as far as, like, opinions on this movie. I would say I was fine with this movie. Like, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. Up until the third act, which is the pretty common consensus I hear from people, is, like, it's the third act is really where the majority of the issues really kind of lies, and, where it comes down to it, where you kind of really have to wonder, like, I get what they did was the point, but was the point good? I guess it technically accomplished what it was trying to do, but does that forgive it for its shortcomings? I don't know. This is a movie I think that's way more clever than it is. That's pure fucking Shyamalan. And there's a whole meta-narrative thing in this film with where I'm just, again, I'm speculating here, but that being said, it's the subtext is not that hard to figure out, where glass is a metaphor for Shyamalan and how no one recognizes his genius and how everyone is trying to put him down because of his genius. And yeah, there's a whole lot of like bitter and pissy ass like meta commentary in this movie about Shyamalan and his views on critics, which maybe I wouldn't necessarily see that if he didn't have a reputation for saying that in this film. Like Lady in the Water is the most overt example. But as far as Glass itself goes, the movie itself is fine for a majority of the film. Like, it's not great, it's not terrible, it's fine. Like, I was kind of going along with it for about 2/3 of it. Like, I wasn't like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is deep or anything like that, but I was like, okay, well, I've kind of seen this before, but it's like, okay, it comes down to, like, the actors are fun. Like, again, James McAvoy as this character, or characters as the case may be, is so much fun to watch, and you just never know what is gonna pop up next. One of the multiple personalities that pops up are twins, which is fucking great. James McAvoy is just chewing all the goddamn scenery. It is a delight. It is a delight to watch, just James McAvoy. And of course, Samuel L. Jackson, who isn't in this movie nearly as much as the trailers will lead you on. He doesn't really come into play until close to the third act. But even then, it's still Samuel L. Jackson, and I'll watch Samuel L. Jackson in anything. So, like, he's still entertaining to watch. Bruce Willis, I am kind of of the opinion, hasn't really tried that hard in the last few years. He's trying a little harder here, and it mostly works. Like, he's fine. Everyone else around him, these three characters, kind of forgettable, or annoying, as the case like the psychiatrist lady gets, and I'll get to her in a little bit. And, where was I going with this? Sorry, I'm a little tired. I haven't eaten dinner yet. I say that every single time I do a solo review. But yeah, outside those characters, though, like, the story itself is kind of and the writing's kind of I mean, the cinematography is good, and I'm not saying, like, all the ideas it presents or the quandaries it poses are bad. It's just the execution is, it's not great, not it's watchable. You know, I'm not sitting here, I'm not miserable. There are a couple genuinely good scenes I liked. It's when it starts getting into the parts where it thinks it's so fucking clever, and we'll get to those in a little while, because that's, again, that goes back in the third act plot. So the general plot for the movie, for those who don't know, is it takes place 3 weeks after Split, but like I want to say like at least like 10 years, like 10 plus years after, no, 19 years. It takes place 19 years after Unbreakable. Yeah, that sounds about right. I correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm sure someone will. And now Bruce Willis is an actual like superhero vigilante in the streets of Philadelphia, who they're called the Overseer, and there is a James McAvoy's character who they call the Horde, who is a serial killer with DID, and he had, what was it, like 23 personalities, something like that, or 13, I forget the exact number, something with a 3. And the movie starts out with where you expect it to end, where Bruce Willis tracks down James McAvoy, and they fight, rah, 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 and then, I mean, it's not a great fight, but Shyamalan's not known for his fight choreography, so that's one of those things I'll let it slide. And so rah, 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 and then when they're about to do like the big final showstopper, that's when they get captured by the police and the psychiatric forces with this woman whose name I forget, who says like, I am a doctor, and I'm a psychologist. And this movie just continues to reinforce that Shyamalan has no idea how psychologists work. Mostly, and when she says this sentence, this killed me. This sentence where she goes like, it's like, I treat people who have very specific disorder. I treat people who believe they have superpowers. I have 3 days to cure you, or else you will get locked in here forever. And I'm just like, psychology doesn't work that way! Sorry, I'm thinking like, what was it, a Jim Sterling video that just had about some video game that just every time they, it just cuts to things that happen in the game, and there's just a guy yelling in the background going, that doesn't work that way! And that's what I was thinking that entire sequence was, like, I have 3 days to cure you, or they're gonna take you in. I'm like, psychology doesn't work that way! It takes years to clear up a psychological illusion like, delusion, like, what, God damn it, I can't think right now. For a condition of that sort, it would take months to years to cure that, not 3 fucking days. I mean, I get you need that to establish the ticking clock for the narrative, but that's not how it works. And I remember I had that same complaint about Split, but then again, the twist in this one kind of lets it get away with that. Kind of. It's still a lazy narrative device, but it does like it with it a little bit, in the same way Split did, where like the way like that they described like DID and all that, and I'm like, that's not how it works. But you kind of forgive it because it's also revealed in that movie. It's not really a spoiler now because the trailer for this movie spoils the fucking plot twist and Split. It takes place in a comic book universe, so like, okay, so flimsy excuses for mental illness is kind of par for the course, so you can kind of look past it. In this case, the reason why it doesn't necessarily get a pass, but it gets a bit of an easier, I'm willing to let it go, is because of a twist, one of many fucking twists that happens in the very end of this film, which I'm gonna have some discussion about, so I'll let you know when, in case you haven't seen this movie and you plan on seeing it. I feel like it's Thursday now, it came out over a week ago, so if you haven't seen it by now, you're probably not gonna, but I don't know, maybe, just in case, I'll let you know when I'm gonna talk about it, but anyway, so, this woman, psychiatrist, is tasked with convincing these 3 people that they are not the superpowered people they are, except for, James McAvoy and Bruce Willis. Mr. Glass is just kind of, because he's so drugged up, and I'm not exaggerating, that's pretty much how he plays it for the most part, like, he has a little twitch here and there. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, so she's trying to convince these two that they're not superheroes or superpowered or whatever. And in the case of like Bruce Willis, the problem is like the movie tries to convince the audience too that these aren't superheroes. And for James McAvoy, they actually, I'll give the movie credit. It gives a fairly convincing series of excuses that can kind of dismiss the superhero stuff. But for Bruce Willis, it makes no goddamn sense, because like it's like, you think you have a traumatic part in your childhood and therefore that might give you the delusion that you have super strength. And like, bitch, we've seen him like knock people across rooms and Ben Steele and shit. He didn't, like, we fucking saw that. Like, I think like all they really had to do to prove it, whether or not he could actually do it, was just to hand him like a metal bar and go, here, bend this. And that would have been it. That would have been like, oh, you have superpowers, cool. If not, like, oh, I guess you don't. Now we can start treating you. Like, that, it really would have been that fucking simple. But no, they gotta do it psychologically, because, you know, goddamn M. Night Shyamalan is so clever. Is so fucking clever. Now, to be fair, when the parts are actually in the psych ward, and the stuff leading up to the third act, like, they're not bad. Especially when they bring in like the survivor of the Split, who comes in to see the Horde or whatever we call them, and then and the two scenes of them talking is a genuinely good scene. Like, I will give them credit; it was a genuinely good scene. And when Samuel L. Jackson reveals that he's faking it, like, again, I'm not giving anything away, it's in the trailer, and he and James McAvoy have their scenes together. Those are legitimately good scenes. And, like, yeah, the movie is at its best when it's up with these three actors being entertaining. You gotta credits, too. My Twitter's blowing up right now. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. But when it has to revolve on everything else, when it gets to the more deeper minutiae of the story, and like the point it's trying to make, or the part where Shyamalan thinks he's being so clever, that's when the movie really starts to show its Shyamalan-isms, and it just gets really obnoxious and pretentious. Because again, there is definitely a current of commentary about Shyamalan's own career, and how he thinks that the reason people don't like his movies is they just don't understand his brilliance, or that are at worst trying to suppress his brilliance. And honestly, Hollywood's biggest mistake was like calling this guy like the next Steven Spielberg or whatever it was, because clearly he clung to that and he refused to listen to anything else. Because ever since then, he's been having this like just really bitter meta narrative to a lot of his movies since then. Like, again, Lady in the Water. Okay, let me take it back. I shouldn't say that. That's not really fair, because again, I haven't seen enough Shyamalan movies to really make that kind of judgment call, but I have seen a couple of them where that was like the most overt examples. Again, Lady in the Water, maybe The Happening to a lesser extent. Split was fairly toned down. I'll give it credit. Split was fairly toned down as far as all that, which kind of part of the reason why it worked. But you can tell that he never got over it. Like, and maybe there's part of that's been kind of, maybe that part that's kind of rising back up to the forefront after the success of Split. Like saying like, haha, see, you forgot about me, Mr. Brilliant Writer Director. Look at all my brilliant ideas. And maybe I'm assuming things that aren't necessarily there, but I don't know. You be the judge. That being said, if you watch the movie and you don't see that, that's fair. So like that's just kind of what I got out of it. But again, film is a subjective media, and especially with Shyamalan's work, I don't know. It's one of those things. The more you know about the director, the more about how he's reacted to critics in the past. You wouldn't necessarily put it past him. So there's that bit of maybe a bias to it too. I don't know. But I have stalled talking about the twist at the end for as long as I can. So from this point on, there will be spoilers. Like, I would say, at best, this is a matinee. Like, I don't hate it. I'm not really mad at it necessarily. I do have one thing to say before we get to the spoiler stuff, is and I don't know if Unbreakable does. I feel like it did a little bit from what I've seen, but again, I haven't watched it in full, so I can't say whether or not it's a problem the first movie had or not. Is when it starts getting really annoying and really pretentious is when all the sub-characters come in. Like, we have Mr. Glass's mom comes in at one point. Bruce Willis's son, who's the same actor from the first movie, I looked it up, comes in, and then the Survivor Split come in, and they start talking about, what are these comic books, or, like, actually, like, historical documents about, like, people that actually existed, and then, which, again, fine, it's an interesting idea, but then they start they're talking about, like, well, well, there was a place called Metropolis. This is really New York City. Is that a coincidence? And then it's like, well, in these superhero stories, there's an antagonist and a protagonist, and they often and then when they ever started, like, just blatantly listing out, like, plot elements or plot devices, or, like, events that happen, like, common event trends that happen in books, that's when it becomes really pretentious, because when in doing so, it thinks that by pointing this stuff out, that it's being so extremely clever, that it's doing that, like, haha, we are pointing that thing in this book is happening in this movie. Recognize my brilliance. And it's like, no, dude, you're just acknowledging plot points. You're not actually saying anything about them. You're just acknowledging that they exist and that they're happening in your movie, kind of. Which leads into the third act, or maybe that's what I think is like, aha, you thought we were like getting this major thing you see in comic books, but you wanted it in my movie, 'cause I'm so clever. I like how I'm making Shyamalan sound like this old English, like, prospector, or like English professor. Like, haha, your thesis on Moby Dick is nothing compared to mine about Treasure Island. You're just lucky. Be gone, 'cause your room cannot handle the ignorance. Your smugness is nothing compared to mine. Now be gone now, while I smell my own farts from this wine glass. That took a very interesting narrative there, and I don't know how I feel about that. That was weird. Anyway, I'm kind of hoping somebody takes that clip and just puts it at random place out of context. But anyway, yeah, so the third act of this movie, where it really starts to fall apart. Now, again, things you've already know that are from the third act, that Mr. Glass and the Horde team up and escape the hospital through, like, the most ridiculous disguise. Like the point where, like, I can't believe anyone fell for this. Where they just dress up, like, McAvoy dresses up like a nurse that after he killed a guy, and they just throw a blanket on Mr. Glass, and apparently that's a good enough disguise to just go right out the front fucking door. Without the guard asking. The guard, who, by the way, sees everyone going in and going out and doesn't recognize this man. He just lets him go. He just lets him go. Like, hey, you signed in with Philbert's ID. You don't look like Phil. And then dead, but that doesn't happen. That's what should have happened. But then they set up through a good chunk of the, like, leading up to the third act, that Mr. Glass is planning this epic showdown. And in case you don't know what they're doing, they literally say, oh, in the comic books, in the limited edition versions, which is what they call them, and I'm like that's, even by comic book standards, that's not, no. Limited, like, the big showdown between the main hero and the main villain is not reduced only to the limited edition. Limited edition only means it has a different variant cover, which just means they can sell more money. Like, they can sell it for a higher price. That's all a variant copy means. The showdown is in every version of the same fucking story. But even if Shyamalan's trying to be clever, he's still not accurate. I know what a showdown is. I actually read comic books, you Philistine. Great, no, I'm the gatekeeper. Anyways, sorry. Mild tangent aside, it sets up with this big, it sets up that he's gonna get the Horde and, what do they call him? The Overseer, to have his big showdown in front of the opening to one of the biggest city in Philadelphia. And that's where they're escaping to go. That's where they're gonna do. That's what they're gonna do. And when they say like, "Oh, we're gonna leave to go to the big building," they don't go to the big building. Because I am Shyamalan and I am so clever. But no, instead they would fight in the parking lot, which I'm kind of like, okay. I mean, I get you're trying to subvert expectations, but I don't think it's doing it in a way that's particularly interesting. So it just comes out as flat and kind of boring, which is disappointing. Which, again, maybe is the point, but it's not a good point. So do you call that a success or a failure? I don't know. Whatever, that's a little too over my head right now. Maybe I'm not clever enough to understand the brilliance of Shyamalan. These voices I'm doing today. Maybe those are my personalities. D.A.D's no joke. I shouldn't joke about him. Where's it going with this? Oh yeah. So instead they find a parking lot, and then they have this big they have a big-ish fight. It's more like they tickle each other by a van for about 5 minutes, give or take. And then the police show up, and then they have to fight back the police, and then Bruce Willis has to, like, throw them in the cargo bin, and then bend a piece of steel to keep them in the cargo bin, because, okay, I guess that means they're safe, but, however, that does not mean maybe they'll get out anytime soon. Anyway, but then it turns out the first major twist is Mr. Glass, technically killed the Horde's parents, because they were also, the Horde's father, because he was on the train that crashed that also gave Bruce Willis his powers, because reasons. So technically, Mr. Glass was responsible for the Horde's existence. I am the mastermind. I create multiple superheroes. You get it? I am a metaphor for the author of the story. Therefore, Mr. Glass is Shyamalan. Recognize my brilliance. I'm in a weird mood tonight. Anyway, back to this. But that's like the first of many twists that happen in like bum, like right after the other. There's like twist upon twist upon twist. And so after this reveal goes down and Kevin basically just kills Mr. Glass right off the bat. Then shenanigans happen and it turns out that the therapist knew that they were superheroes the whole time. She was just trying to convince them they weren't, so that way she wouldn't have to kill them. So then her and I guess a crony of people that have like a 3-leaf clover on their arms decide to go ahead and kill the Horde and the Overseer, and they're just dead. And they leave Bruce Willis's son, who saw this whole thing. They let him go for whatever reason. And same for the Horde survivor, they let her go because she's also there. Everyone who saw everything, by the way, like they saw Bruce Willis get drowned unprovoked. That's illegal. Could they not report that? I guess maybe if they're like a super secret organization, maybe they're too powerful. Movie has no interest in saying no. Then it turns out that sorry, my phone keeps buzzing off with like Twitter and Discord notifications. I apologize. But yeah, so it turns out that the reason there are more superheroes is because a secret organization has been killing all the superheroes the whole time, and you just never know about it. So that means these motherfuckers killed Spider-Man way before Thanos. Wait, would that mean they couldn't stop that? Does the Infinity Gauntlet exist in this universe, or did it? Is it still existing? I don't want to think about this too hard. Anyway, in which case, how did they stop them if they killed all the other superheroes? And how could superhero books take place in modern day if we don't know about them? And who's writing the comic books? These twists already make no sense. And then on top of that, it turns out that oh, by the way, and just another little nitpicky, and it's not really nitpicky, this happens quite a few times. Shyamalan has no idea how to write people of teenaged age at all, or how people in even like comic shops talk. And I'm like, have you never had a conversation with anyone that actually reads comic books. I feel like you haven't, because it ends with therapist lady going into a comic shop for whatever reason, and she goes into the back, and there's this guy in the background. Then again, I've been on Twitter long enough. There's probably one asshole that does this and thinks they're smart, who says like, but he's the mastermind. He always wants you to look where you want him to, where he wants you to look. He shows you in one direction when, he's done he's done something else entirely in the other direction. You get it? 'Cause Shyamalan's known for his twists, and the mastermind is Mr. Glass, and Mr. Glass is a metaphor for the author of the story, which happens to be Shyamalan. So Shyamalan is the mastermind, and he fooled you all. He's brilliant. Anyway. I'm having way too much fun with that. And then the therapist lady realized, like, oh no, Mr. Glass tricked me, and now he's gonna stream all the video footage of all the superhero fight out into the world. This is his plan all along. How he never intended it for us to have the way more interesting and cinematically satisfying final climax in front of a big building like we were promised. No! Through his use of subversion and multiple twists, he has fooled us all! Brilliant! Okay, I'm done. I swear I'm done. That was the last one. That was the last one. So yeah, the third act is really where it gets needlessly convoluted and just kind of dumb. And like to the point where like the government twist comes in, I'm like, really, we're doing this? All right. And like, I guess if you're trying to make it serve as a deconstruction of the comic book genre, I'm not really sure what you're deconstructing necessarily, and maybe that's something I'm missing. Maybe that's where his brilliance is too much for me. But for what it is, like, the third act is really where it falls apart, and everyone's kind of on the same page on that. It feels like, I'm sure there's gonna be at least one or two people that defend it as like, oh, it's a cinematic masterpiece, like kind of like when people liked Venom when that came out. And I'm sure I'm gonna be arguing with these people on Twitter fairly quickly, but like I said, even with that all being said, as much as it kind of lost me in the third act, like this isn't an awful movie. Even by Shyamalan standards, isn't an awful movie. This is just kind of shockingly forgettable, and or just not interesting enough. Like, some of the ideas are interesting, but they're not really explored enough in the way that they needed to be, and it gets way too self-indulgent in the wrong ways in the third act. But is it bad? No, I wouldn't say this movie's bad. It just could have been a lot better. But I know as far as like people who hate this movie, I'm one of the gentler ones. So I don't know. I think that's honestly all I really have to say about this. I can't really think of anything else. And as far as trailers go, I think I've talked about everything I got the trailer for in this. Yeah. So not really much to add there. So I think it's it for this week. Next week is The Kid Who Would Be Kane. The Kid Who Would Be Kane, which is actually getting pretty good reviews. I heard it's actually kind of a lot of fun for a kids movie, kind of very old-fashioned, which definitely sparked my interest. So we'll definitely see how that goes. In the meantime, I'm gonna definitely try to get my best and worst list done next week. I'm gonna do my best. Otherwise, I think that's all I got for this time, kiddos. So thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Take care.